Yeah, so remember the energy, there are two types of energy. One is the energy that, obviously that our cells create, that is through mitochondria, right? So mitochondria, just in case most people forget the high school biology, is an ancient bacteria that is inside our cell. So think about that for a second. There is an organism inside our cell that has its own DNA that actually provides all the energy to our cell. If you think about from their perspective,
he's a warlock.
Welcome to the Earth Locker with Tom,
Rob,
and Byron,
where we unlock Earth's best kept secrets and make you feel a little bit better on a daily basis.
We're rolling.
Oh yeah.
Hey, we're rolling. This is our new setup for the podcast. It just happened magically, like the third eye.
This used to be my humble dwellings. And now it's been turned into a sort of game show set.
like the dating show?
Yeah. Mine's not really a game show. Mine's a lounge.
So no one's getting off at the end of this except for me and Byron. Huh? I'm going to hump Byron's leg at the end of this to get some value.
I'm going to hang around to watch that.
Oh, well, that's the social distancing responsible thing to do.
Tom, I see you've shaved your head, you Corona cliche.
Yes, I have. Yeah, it was actually it was meant to be less than this, and then Laura, my lovely wife, who's not a hairdresser, I said, look, just go up the sides, and then we're going to try and blend it. I should have probably looked at a video on YouTube or something.
That's where I learned how to fade hair without a YouTube video
and make podcasts.
Exactly. So I should have just done that. I've done it myself. But yeah, she went a little high, so she said, "Look, you might as well just do it because you look like a numpty with it like that." So she did the lot. So yeah, I've jumped on the
it gives you
the COVID-19 bandwagon of haircuts.
A hard edge. It gives you a sort of a hard edge. You look like a bit of a Leicestershire thug.
That's what I'm going for. I fit in well here now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously it goes without saying that our trio of hostesses is broken up because Tom is being responsible and social isolating with his family, which is what he should be doing.
Up in Leicestershire.
Up in Leicestershire.
Yeah, well, I've got two little ones as well, and we felt that, like everyone, I think at the moment, it's important to try and protect the loved ones and whatnot. We're currently in our lovely house up in Leicestershire. We've got a nice big garden to play around in. So we're all happy, there's a lot of positives to this because, so often we're away, aren't we?
What?
We're so often away from home.
Yeah, man. And my mate Patrick, he's someone who's worked, all his life. He's done 60, 70-hour weeks. He's a chef. But he's just finding this time fab, It's time that essentially you're not defined by the structure of your work. Your days are
You're not earning brownie points with life by working your ass off. You're earning brownie points by doing responsible and
by not
cutting down.
And it's interesting because no other holiday on planet Earth unites all of the human race together. Do you know what I mean?
That's
true. You have Christmas in that period of time where there's different variations on a kind of a.
And a lot of divorces at the end of it, which this might mimic.
Exactly. Well,
Tom, this divorce. Social isolating, we expect a whole generation. This is going to be the COVID-19 generation. We had the Z generation. I guess I'm a Gen Xer. You guys, I don't know what the hell you are.
I'm millennial. We're millennials.
You're millennials? I think we're millennials, right?
Yeah.
We are millennials.
And then there's going to be
Chris
COVID-19.
shaking his head behind the camera. You are a millennial, Chris. Get used to it.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah. You little fusspot, yeah? He's always moaning and whining, this little millennial.
You know what's interesting about with marriages and with kids and stuff? Because, I'm used to having kind of chunks of time away, and then I'll have chunks of time at home. So me and Laura are used to being under each other's skin a lot and, under each other's feet for a long period of time, and then I'll go away again. So it's kind of
interesting
two extremes. It'd be quite interesting to see how people cope. There's a lot of married couples who they both do 9 to 5s, or one does a 9 to 5 and they come back and they only have a small amount of time in the evening
few hours
or in the morning. Yeah. And then now there's just going to be this huge extended period of people and couples.
You go, who are you again?
Exactly. Yeah.
Who are you in the morning?
You know what? You really annoy me.
Yeah. I don't know who you are for the other 20 hours of the day. Because I know I'm a different person in the morning to who I am in the evening, you know? Like I have a different, like I wake up and then I have this overwhelming need to kind of get things done. I need to be mechanical about slowing myself down in the mornings and saying, Rob, your brain is just, it's going, yep. And I need to, you know, that kind of self-knowledge has made me realize that I am a more annoying person in the morning than I am the rest of the day. You know, and that's actually an interesting thing about marriage, because you're standing on the altar, you're going, I promise to stay with you even if you're a pain in the arse
in the morning.
Or if you get leprosy.
If you're Godzilla, leprosy's
like
easy.
You're a different
it's fucking
person
annoying. That's
throughout
the worst.
the day,
yeah.
huh?
No, leprosy would be easy to do. I love every little bit of you, even the bits that fall off. I mean, that's easy, but an annoying, not morning person.
There's less of you to love the more this disease goes along.
Exactly.
Whatever happened to leprosy?
I know life
was easier with leprosy.
Life was easier when leprosy was the main concern.
Like cholera, you know? These were charming, romantic diseases. You know, that people got during the time of La Belle Époque. But so I've become you've shaved your head. I've become a master baker.
I'm so glad you said baker.
I think that really fast. Master what?
If you were a master, I mean, majority of the men in particularly the single men in this world probably been the other thing.
We all have to find ways to make money in different ways, okay? Some of us do video shout outs. Rob does little video spunk out. No, I don't.
Every evening at 8 p.m.
Yeah,
GMT.
exactly.
GMT. Let's all give it a hand.
Yeah. You want to be putting a filter on this, kids?
So you've become a master baker.
I've been pretty good at baking.
He has actually.
You had my orange cake the other day.
He gave me a lovely cake and a soda bread. Not to be a cliche Irishman, but a soda bread is excellent.
A soda bread is a very specific Irish thing where it's made from wholemeal flour, right? Let's just tell No, but it's very, very beautiful. It's an old traditional Irish recipe for bread, which is essentially bicarbonate of soda and
I'm finding interesting about the whole quarantine thing, and what I think is really important to talk about with Naveen, our guest today, is that
should we say that to our guest is today?
Yeah.
Who is our guest today, Tom?
Who's our guest today, Tom?
Our guest today is Naveen Jain. So Naveen Jain is an entrepreneur driven to solve global grand challenges through innovation. He is the founder of several successful companies, including Moon Express, Viome, Blue Dot, TalentWise, Intellius, and InfoSpace. So
but who is he?
Who is he? So Naveen Jain, I first came across Naveen Jain when we decided to do these tests by Viome, which we've talked about before. Viome test our microbiome gut bacteria, and their goal, the thing that they're trying to achieve with this company is to eradicate chronic disease as being something that it just comes upon us. It's actually a choice.
To make illness elective. Wasn't that the kind of idea? Elective. It's like, that's fantastic. That's amazing, you know.
Yeah, and what I love about Naveen, I mean, I'm in the middle of his book at the minute, Moonshots, and what he's so brilliant at, for a start, he's incredibly inspiring, but he makes things so world problems. Think about these major world problems. If there's a problem that we think, we could solve that problem, but how do we do it? How do we solve that problem? He takes on these major problems or things that seem like literally just a dream and go, I'm going to try and solve it. And he actively goes out and does it. And he puts steps in a process to make it happen. Yeah. And he talks so much about how things in this world, once upon a time, would have felt impossible. You know, at the start of his book, he talks about the human race used to think that going more than 30 miles an hour on a horse, you would just evaporate. Right? You couldn't possibly go faster than that. So like going on a train or anything, or a car or an automobile, it just seemed impossible for the human body to withstand it. And every human felt that way. So if you think about a lot of the things that we talk about now, and particularly on the Earth Locker, I believe we are in our own mission to educate the planet, right?
Proactive thinking to make us all better Earthlings.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that mission there's a process to that, but you have to believe in that desire, that goal at the end of it, that it will happen, because you have to put steps in the process.
I've been doing this meditation, lads, with Deepak Chopra, who I love.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so amazing. He's a sort of a modern academic and practicer. Essentially, he's an expert on Buddha and all things Buddhism, and he speaks Sanskrit. Oh, he's such a dreamboat. Right? So Deepak and Oprah Winfrey, we did this 21-day meditation thing about essentially activating the power of hope in you. It's really fascinating, right? Yeah. It's, because a lot of people have a what they call a passive approach to hope, which is, we'll hope for the best and, hopefully it won't get flooded and blah, blah, blah. There's this sort of passive approach to hope, but, they talk about how hope is the fuel of the positive thinking that Naveen Jain is doing to make these incredible advances for the human race. But it all starts with, and I've been doing it like most days for the past 10, 12 days. And you start to feel this kind of positive emanation that's happening outside of your consciousness, or as of your awareness, like your sort of surface consciousness, that starts to kind of make you essentially feel more optimistic about things. You know what I mean? And all it takes is a little 20-minute thing at the start of my day where I was saying I'm more annoying. Sit down, listen to Deepak, and he basically gives you a mantra that kind of centers you. And the mantra is to achieve, let's say at the center of it, you put hope is a guiding force. Hope is a guiding force. And essentially it really works. It's that thing about consciously training the unconscious.
But I think also it's the fact that you're doing that with, I think it's like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people do those meditations. Yeah. So it's everybody having that same intentionality, and how, whatever you believe philosophically about quantum physics and whatever, or some principles like the 100th monkey principle, which is a book I should get you sometime, that when collectively the society figures something like you're not going to dissolve it when you go over 30 miles an hour, it suddenly just opens up the possibility and everyone just accepts this new parameter of reality, and become more hopeful beings. It's definitely like something we need all be.
Like I've been stretching my hips, right? I've been
one thing you got in quarantine was more flexible hips. Thank God for that.
I'm going to become out like a baking acrobat.
You'll walk around looking like Goldmember in Austin Powers. Like bending your legs up here.
Yeah, like just giving people crepes and stuff. And cigars.
And a pancake.
But the thing, like with the hip thing, really quick, is that because I've been, because of lockdown to some degree or another, I've been challenging myself for longer and longer periods of keeping a muscle under gentle stretch and strain. You know what I mean? So like Tom, having my back flat to the ground and then having my hips essentially using gravity to kind of stretch out and create space in the pelvis and the hips. And last night, because of positive thinking like Naveen Jain, my knees were nearly touching the floor.
Yeah.
And I went into a really very, very spiritual space, in terms of my awareness.
Because you're in so much pain.
Yes, because I was the pain. My existence, my entire awareness, my absolute experience was the pain in my groin and my hips and my pelvis. And it stayed that for a long, long period of time. Like that's crazy. It was absolutely beautiful. And as a result, my hips are, they're getting well.
But that's the thing. That's what's amazing about that is that is like so many different things. It's a process that you've gone through, and there was steps in that process to achieve the end goal, which is getting your knees on the ground, right?
Yeah.
We do it with everything, whether it's, people talk about it in training and in a diet, right? It's about sticking to a process and believing in the end result, that's what you want, and seeing that end result. If you see it and you don't deviate from it, there's absolutely no reason why you won't achieve that end result that you're after. And
Naveen's thoughts exactly. Yes, indeed.
Naveen Jain.
He's a benevolent supervillain who lives on the moon.
I think he wants to.
Is that an Umbrella Academy? Is that the what? No.
Actually, yeah. There's a good moon connection, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, Moonshots. That's right.
Luther.
That's why I wanted to get him on. I was like, I like people who like the moon.
Oh, you've been there. I've spent some time there.
I know about the moon. It's great. Yeah. There's a lot going on there. I understand why he has ambition for it. There's a lot of potential for the moon.
Let's just use this as an opportunity to try and get Naveen to watch Umbrella Academy. It's like, just spend the whole hour going.
I see Naveen as a bit of a Luther, as a bit of a Reginald Hargreaves in a way.
He is a bit Reginald Hargreaves.
No. There's a bit of an element to him that I think he's a bit of an alien in the sense that he sees the world and the potential of this planet in a completely different way to anyone I've ever come across before. And it is,
I think, probably quite no nonsense about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and he gets it done. That's what I love about it. He has ambition. He has these goals. He sees these things that could be changed, and he goes about his business doing it.
Yeah, with a sort of a terrifying directness and sort of determination.
Yeah, and huge amount of positivity as well.
Oh,
and I believe we are now joined by Naveen Jain,
and he will appear. So, are you talking to us from your moon base?
Actually, I'm talking to you from.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous.
The moon looks very similar to.
The moon looks a lot like the British Virgin Islands.
The British Virgin Islands up in the. You probably know Thomas. So Richard Branson and I own an island together here called Mosquito. So that's where we are.
What?
Oh, fantastic! Well, that's not a bad place to be in quarantine, is it?
Wow.
Yes, it's a really good place. I mean, it's literally just us, our staff, and Richard and his daughter Holly and Freddie.
So when he comes over for a cup of sugar, you say, "I'm sorry, I'm isolating. Can't give you a cup of sugar right now, Richard. You gotta order it from Google or Amazon or whatever."
How is Richard Branson? Is he a bit of a trouble causer around the island? Is he a bit of a nuisance? Is he going around kicking over bins?
He's really, really, if you get to know him, he's extremely shy and extremely introvert. And when he's out in the public, and he's one of those guys, he thinks he's a flamboyant and extrovert.
Nice. Well, the man, he gets around in an air balloon, which is quite flashy. I mean, makes a similar statement to a sports card.
Well, this is amazing. Naveen, number one. Naveen Jain, we gave a little introduction off camera about you, talking about your achievements, what you bring to the table. We all know you originally from Viome, and we're going to focus on that. Not so much because I think you are so much more than just one of your companies, which is one of the things that we find so interesting about you as a guest here on the Earth Locker, because we're about being better Earthlings. And from everything I've heard from you, that's something you do to a next level.
Yeah. We were all talking about positive thinking, the power of positive thinking, Naveen. You're a great example of that, because we've all been, especially in the kind of the odd romance of the Corona lockdown. We think that one of the functions of this podcast will be to encourage, positive thinking in the minds of as many people as possible. And you're such a fabulous example of that. You've done so much. You've done so many different things. Tell us a bit about Moon Express. I'm really, really interested in Moon Express. And, Tom Hopper has been to the moon, in one way or another.
Yeah.
So, if you think about, Moon Express, or even the idea of going to the moon, it is more than just landing on the moon. It's symbolic of what we as humans are capable of doing when we put our mind to something. So to me, as an entrepreneur, it is all about making things possible that seems so audacious, so difficult, that one would argue that it's just not possible, right? And that's why we call them these moonshots, right?
I was just quickly going to say, Naveen, have we been to the moon since 1969? I couldn't tell you how many times man has walked on the moon since. Has it been a handful or many? No, we definitely have.
So we remember Apollo 11 was the first time when the humans landed on the moon. Then Apollo 12 and Apollo 13, we didn't quite make it. If you remember from the movie Apollo 13, we had to go around the moon. Then we landed on Apollo 14, 15, 16. The last was Apollo 17. Wow. And Apollo 17, the last man to walk on the moon was Eugene Cernan.
Oh yeah, I think I saw a documentary about him, The Last Man on the Moon.
Yeah,
Last Man on the Moon. That's him. Yeah. So I think since then we really never had humans ever walk on any other planet. To me, we should be thinking about whether it is a moon as a stepping stone to be able to go to the Mars and Pluto or even beyond.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we should be a multiplanetary society. Why should we be stuck on one single rock? And if you go back to humanity as we evolved, we didn't just simply live in the savannas of Africa and say we are contented, we're just fine here. We explored all 7 continents, and we should be thinking of moon as our 8th continent. And there is no reason for us to not be able to utilize the resources that are in abundance on the moon, such as helium-3. So, if you think about it, why would we be destroying a planet with a fossil fuel when we could bring back a helium-3, which is an isotope of helium that could be used for clean energy for the fusion, and a small quantity of helium-3 could power this planet for generations to come. And that's the best possible clean energy source we can get. So why wouldn't we use our 8th continent to do that?
You now have the rights, don't you have with Moon Express, you have the rights to essentially go and figure out how to harvest this very, very clean fuel for people.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that not only we are the only company at least on the planet Earth has a right to be able to leave the planet Earth and go and land on the moon. President Obama signed into the law that essentially say that any company or any individual who goes to any extraterrestrial body and able to bring back any stuff, they get to own it. It's right. It's rights are very clear that when we go bring it back, we own it.
Right. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, that's interesting, though, but you don't own it on the planet. So no one's going to own the moon. It's going to be intergalactically proprietary as opposed to internationally.
It's kind of like an international water that you don't quite own the international water, but if you use your resources to find the oil or find the fish, you can own the fish or the oil, but you don't own the international water. At the same time, you also have what they call non-interference. That means somebody else can come in, oh, you found the oil, I'm right there now. Right? So my point is there is an idea of non-interference. So if we go to the moon, and let's assume we find the resource and we start to collect those resources, nobody can come along and say, hey, wait a second, move along, I'm coming here.
Hey, so Naveen, what's this thing that you're going to harvest or you intend to harvest? You said helium-3?
So helium-3 is an isotope of helium, but just let's not get stuck on what to do. But the fact that you and I are talking about it, that tells me that we have moved past the concept of individuals and a small group of companies are capable of doing things that only the superpowers did before. So think about it. When we land on the moon and we successfully go out there, we become the 4th superpower, right? It is only the United States, Russia, and China has ever landed on the moon. And we become the 4th superpower ever to do so. Now imagine that. A small company or a determined individuals, when they can start to go to the moon, what else is possible? To me, this is like, Mr. Bannister, when he showed that someone could run a mile under 4 minutes, right after the 13 people crossed that boundary. Until then, nobody could do that. And that is what I think is going to happen when we land on the moon and show that what entrepreneurs are capable of doing. Wow, yeah. Imagine what the next thing is going to be. Someone is going to say, that is not enough. I'm going to go to the Mars. And someone's going to say, Mars? That's easy. Let's go to Pluto.
Let's go to Pluto. Yeah. I love that. The 4th International is entrepreneurship, Yeah. And I feel so strongly like charities and whatever, that's all amazing and philanthropic opportunities. But to really be sustainable, we have to figure out the parameters that we're doing things that actually are sustainable themselves. They're entrepreneurial. They're a sound business. They take care of the company and the environment and wherever the moon, if we go to.
Hey, Naveen, isn't it true that there's about like 1/16 of the gravity on the moon to the Earth? And if we were to have a presence there, it would make sort of further space travel way easier and way more cost effective, right?
Well, so there's several parts. I mean, people say that how, if you go to the moon, how would we how can we live on the moon? Because the first thing people always ask is, how are you going to grow the food on the moon? And to me, as an entrepreneur, it's not about having the right answer. It's about asking the right question. So when you ask someone how to grow the food on the moon, guess what? The only solution is to find a way to grow the food on the moon. What if you were to ask a slightly different question, which is, why do we eat food? And when you ask a simple question of why we eat food, suddenly you realize, oh, we eat food because we need nutrition. And we eat food because we need energy. What if we can get energy from radiation? What if we get energy from photosynthesis like plants do? What's the nutrition do we need? Do we need hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen? And what if we find the water on the moon? That means we already have the hydrogen and oxygen. And now we are simply talking about finding enough nitrogen on the moon or taking enough nitrogen. My point is, asking the different questions allows you to solve a problem very, very differently. And I believe that's what the entrepreneurship is all about. Entrepreneurship is about solving a problem. If you want to do a small good in the world, you start a nonprofit. If you want to do a large good in the world, you start for-profit entrepreneurship, because profit is the engine that allows you to scale. It takes the people to help 10,000 people to 1 million people to 100 million people to 1 billion people. And because if you simply do a nonprofit, it doesn't matter. You can be the richest man in the world. You're going to eventually run out of money if you cannot generate something profitable, right? So my point is, if you really want to do great good in the world, you actually start to believe that doing good and doing well always comes together. The only way to do well sustainably is to do a tremendous good in the world. Remind me, guys.
Well, I mean, number one, we're talking about making a very, very positive effect on the world, and the best way to do that is to set yourself up for profit, not non-profit.
Yes. Yeah. So what I was saying was that doing good and doing well are the only way to create a sustainable way of creating a great enterprise. If you can find a way to help 1 billion people, there's no doubt in my mind you can create $100 billion or $200 billion company. That means all that matters is you focus on helping as many people as you can, and the business takes care of itself, right? And I think the reason the entrepreneurs normally fail is because they start a company simply to make money. When you start a company to solve a problem, you never fail. When you start a company to make money, you always end up failing, because making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it. You just have to enjoy the process.
That's so true.
Woo-woo! Now we know what he's been doing up on his moon base. He's been
that's
Tom is all over that one.
Oh yeah. Hey, I love that one. I mean, don't think too much about it.
Tom is reading your book right now, Moonshot. You know, I know of, and I've heard you speak about it. I mean, what's wrong with you, Naveen? Why do you think so fundamentally different than other people and other business people? You know, you take the whole paradigm of a sustainable company and you really turn into something organic. I mean, where does this come from in you?
Well, first of all comes from coming from a very humble background, right? So I grew up in India where we had absolutely no food to eat. We had no place to stay. And, you know, God bless, I came to this country about 35 years ago with $5 in my pocket, right? And God has been just so kind to us. And God has given us everything we could have possibly asked for. And when you get so much and you wonder that what would you do to pay your debt back to the society? And you always start to wonder, okay, if you have all this, what if you could do something that could repay your debt back? And the only way to do that is to find a way to help billions of people around the world. And if you can find bigger the problem, bigger the opportunity as an enterprise. So it really goes together. That means you don't do it because you are somehow selfless. You actually do it because you're so selfish that you're not only going to help yourself and drive tremendous amount of pleasure, you're helping your children and your grandchildren, right? So, I mean, if you look at what we're doing with Viome, I mean, imagine, even in this epidemic of this infectious diseases, and, God bless, I'm not going to minimize that, number of people who are dying, but there's still hundreds of thousands of people who are dying from this epidemic, and which is an absolute sad commentary on humanity that we got there. But every single day, there are millions of people who are dying from heart diseases, millions of people who are dying from Alzheimer, dementia, cancer, and diabetes, obesity, autoimmune diseases. My point is, we have this epidemic of chronic diseases. If you look at overall, if you take the coronavirus out, which is every 100 years or so, we have this pandemic, we have more or less gotten our arms around the infectious diseases, and we have had this pandemic of chronic diseases. 90% of us, sometime during our lifetime, suffer from one of the chronic diseases, right? Whether it's obesity, diabetes, autoimmune disease, depression, anxiety, and you pick a name, the cancers and heart disease and all that stuff that goes on. So our thinking was, what if we can understand the human body at such a molecular level? We know it's simply about the biochemistry, because we as humans are basically biochemical, right? If we can understand everything that's happening inside the body, and we can use the food and medicine, nutrition to simply modulate us, then we can prevent and reverse chronic diseases. And I thought, that is a problem you can get your arms around. Not only you do it for yourself, you do it for your children, you do it for your grandchildren, and you do it for the humanity. Because once you do that, you are fundamentally attacking a multi-trillion-dollar pharmaceutical industry. To some extent, you would argue, has really become a parasite on humanity. I mean, think about what pharmaceutical companies do. They want to keep you sick. Yeah. If you have a diabetes or if you have an autoimmune diseases, they want to simply suppress the symptoms because they look at you as a lifetime subscriber. Think about it for a second.
This is a problem. Because I believe fully in the healthcare system is pretty corrupt because of this. Yeah. And when I came across Viome, it felt like this revelation. I was like, this is what the industry is missing. But my question to you is, do you see that Viome will ever break into the mainstream of healthcare? Because that surely is the answer. If we can, because I'm amazed by Viome. I took Viome and I introduced these two guys to it, and what it did for myself, my wife, and my son, it's been incredible. And we've been able to tune in my son's diet. My son's autistic, and food has massive waverings on his behavior. And we've been able to dial in his diet so well because of Viome.
Right.
I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful to you, Naveen, for that.
And also, you're the reason why I did a shot of apple cider vinegar and lemon juice this morning. And which has been every morning for the last couple of weeks to keep the old gut flora nice and healthy and happy.
So my question to you, Naveen, going back to what I was saying, is because of how, I suppose, for want of a better word, corrupt the healthcare system is, do you see Viome or a version of Viome making its way into the mainstream?
Or any of your companies that you do?
I think it absolutely will. And Tom, anytime you look for something disruptive, what happens is you have to go around the system to build enough momentum where the system actually starts to implode because it no longer can take that force. So if you look at the personal computers, right? When the personal computers first came about, the PCs, right? People thought, oh, who would want that PC? I got this big, massive mainframe. Oh, it is for my secretary. They do the word processing on it. It's like a typewriter. Okay, fine, whatever, right? And then say, oh, it got this spreadsheet. Oh, it's like my accounting guy used a calculator. So that's a calculator. And it starts to become more and more powerful. And suddenly, next thing you know, these guys are just taking over the world. Today, there is not a single person who doesn't use personal computer. So to me, that is literally how the disruption happens. If you want to change the education system, you can't change the education system because there are too many vested interests out there who are going to prevent you. And it's like any system is like an organism. It has a strong immune system. Anytime it sees anything foreign, it absorbs it, it releases the antibody, and it kills the thing, right? And that's literally what will happen if we go into the mainstream today. So what happens is you go to the people who are suffering, and you go to the individuals because what happens is everyone in the healthcare industry wants to keep you sick, because when you are sick, they make money. And when you are healthy, no one makes money.
What do you think about, Naveen? What do you think about meditation? I've been doing a lot of meditation over the past 2.5 years and building that mind-body connection. And I must say, I think overall as an organism, I have definitely strengthened because my mind knows how to speak to my body and regulate it more positively these days. I think meditation has a definite medical function. Do you meditate yourself?
I do. And I think, but it's more than that. I think it's really, as you mentioned, it's the gut-brain connection. So it's not just your brain controlling your gut and the body. In fact, if you look at it, it's your gut microbiome. Your gut microbiome, especially the 40 trillion of those gut microbiome, they control your brain, they control your mood, they control your behavior, they control how you think. So what happens is that this is the life of living on the island. The internet drops every so often.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Poor you.
What does edit it in?
It must be so tough.
So anyway, so the Wi-Fi had dropped for 30 seconds. It came back up.
That's okay. You're back now.
So what I was saying was, that your gut app, that your 40 trillion of microbes. So let's just step back for a second. If you look at us as human beings, we are so proud of who we are. But interesting thing is, if you look at, the genes that we get from mom and dad, that actually account for less than 1% of all the genes that are expressed in our body. So if you look at our DNA, which research is very clear that the microbes actually, contribute to our obesity, our diabetes, our immune system, the autoimmunity. 70% of our immune system is along our gut lining. 90% of all the serotonin that makes us feel good is actually produced in our gut. Right. So if 90%. You start to think about that,
I've been focusing on the wrong area.
And seriously, I mean, look, if you look at the things, people when they get depressed, what happens? The first thing, either they don't eat or they eat, or when you're depressed, you take a whole bowl of ice cream and that's what you want.
Well, this is the problem with the emotional connection to food and to sugar and all these processed things. It's affecting our brains, and I think one of the things that I've learned massively from Viome is how our gut is linked to our brain, and how, just the tiniest little changes can make a difference from when you wake up in a bad mood or a good mood.
Absolutely. And this connected to something called vagus nerve. And, I think, we named it a vagus nerve, thinking what happens in the gut is going to stay in the gut. That never happens.
Yeah, same with Vegas.
Yeah.
It always follows you home.
Exactly.
Straight to the STD clinic. What? But it's interesting that it's called the vagus nerve. Why is it called the vagus nerve? The one that connects the gut to the brain?
I mean, I don't know. It's a wiggle nerve. I don't know.
I wonder what came first, the nerve or the city?
Of course. I mean, the sin always comes first, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sin
city. It's a sin that you can't.
No, the city. Yeah.
That all the real men always go in an aircraft carrier?
Yeah.
Every girl loves that. I mean, which girl doesn't love a guy from the aircraft carrier?
They love a chap in uniform or dungarees, as Byron's been persisting with for years. If you had a visual,
I'm trying to make it a thing. Eventually, I will.
He's the only one that is. He's persistent on dungarees still being a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, that's
Naveen, on the Earth Locker, one of the reasons why we started the Earth Locker was effectively our own moonshot. When I was starting reading your book, I realized that that's exactly what the mission that we're on. I personally have a dream that we will eradicate chronic illness through diet. I'm a big believer in diet, and I think between talking to me, Rob and Byron, between the three of us, we realize that there is a future that could happen, but it's all down to education. And our goal, our mission is to educate the planet to realize that there is another way of thinking about food. But this mission that we're on with technology, and that linked technology being convenience for human beings, and the way that the food industry is going, is this a mission that ultimately we're fighting against such a huge thing, in that the human being is always looking for something more and more convenient. They want this convenience in their life.
Well, it is true that people want convenience, but at the same time, people are realizing that they want to take care of their body. And in fact, they have been misled and misrepresented by billions of dollars of advertising, whether it is Coke or Pepsi or, Kellogg's of the world, who are feeding you the, early getting kids addicted to sugar early in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. And the Cokes and Pepsi, and essentially getting them addicted to even more sugar. I mean, it's literally you're drinking the sugar water, eating sugar. And the sugar industry has done a great job of essentially making us addicted to their product. Mm-hmm. Or, look at the caffeine, right? But the point really is that at the end of the day, the humanity is waking up to it. And waking up to means that to me, just because you eat a proper food doesn't need to be more expensive or doesn't need to be any less convenient, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about what's happening in the human gut, that what is the gut of the plant, which is the soil. And if you can adjust the microbiome of the soil, you will never need pesticide, you never need any of the insecticide, and you will have a massive yield, and you will have the fruit that is organic and rich and ripe and tasty, right? So to me, it is all these things are connected. And I think sometimes that if you look at the Mother Nature, this epidemic may have been the one that actually gave us pause to think about the Mother Nature reset. When in the cities in India, when the air quality is now breathable, not because we all stop from using the things, suddenly the air quality in China and India is become breathable. When you look at in LA, people can now see the sky. There is no more of the smog, right? And my point is it a reminder to us that what have we done to our Mother Nature? And we really need to rethink who we are as humans. We have to learn to live in this greater ecosystem of making our ecosystem inside us healthy and making an ecosystem outside us healthy. So I absolutely admire, Tom, what you guys are doing to bring this knowledge to people, because if it is people like you who have a megaphone to be able to spread this word, because it's not your problem, it's not my problem, it is our problem as humanity. And more of us we can recruit to come together, the system will be under so much pressure. When we go to a doctor and say, I don't want to take the damn medicine, your job, most doctors have really become what I would say salespeople for pharmaceutical company. Give me the ill, I'll give you the pill, right? I mean, that's literally all they do. Prescribe the pill all day. They don't want to talk about nutrition. And if you even tell them, hey, I changed my diet and it worked, they look at you as if you're an
like
alien.
you're crazy. Yeah.
You can do that.
I mean, I remember when I was talking to a doctor about Freddie, and I'd been doing all this research about Freddie, my son, and about autism, and seeing that people have been having these results with their kids by changing their diets. And I remember speaking to, for want of a better word, like a traditional doctor. And he was like, "Oh no, that stuff doesn't work." I mean, there are like occasional cases where that does happen, but I wouldn't take any notice.
Wow! So he was even speaking the policy line of whatever pharmaceutical company was sponsoring him. He was even kind of spouting essentially what they'd like him to spout. Like, that's mad.
And because they're funded. I mean, look at all the medical school are funded by these pharma companies, and basically all they teach doctors is how to prescribe their drugs.
Wow. Yeah, there's a book, isn't there, called The Myth of the Chemical Cure, which talks about us kind of reversing out of this sort of pill-centric modern world that we have, that for every illness there is a pill, as you said, Naveen. Is that, things that are a little bit more things that need to be managed more, perhaps like autism and depression. These things have a million cures, and that it's everything to do with the individual.
I mean, look at it. We think we are onto something new. And if you go back to 2,500 years ago, what did Hippocrates say, right? All diseases begin in the gut. One man's food is the man's poison. Let food be thy medicine. Let thy medicine be the food. I mean, it's not a rocket science.
Yeah. Literally thousands of years. We've been talking about this.
Exactly.
The exact same thing. I mean, that's what's the problem is. You've talked about it before, Naveen, about it's the going to a doctor now is all about fixing the symptom as opposed to the root cause. Like I have a dream where, every time you go to these doctors, whether with one of these problems, they're going to hand you a Viome kit and go, there you go. Or just simply ask the question, what's your diet like? What have you been eating? Talk me through a week of what you're eating. Because so many of these problems like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, they've only become these massive problems in the last 40 years. And that's when the food industry has taken on this ridiculous amount of sugar and all these additives and the way the farming is done now. That's what's caused the problem in our bodies. And
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, insecticides, the way we grow our food with pesticides. Remember, the job of pesticides to kill the microorganism. When we eat that food, what does it do? It kills our gut microbiome, right?
Yeah.
So how do you rebalance the growth of food, Naveen? You know, you talked interestingly there about how Viome, the company, is about rebalancing our guts, but you talked about doing the same process on the food in the soil, so adjusting the soil. So there's a beautiful company I've been following called AF Forest, who essentially will take a soil sample from around the world. You might have a field, you might have 10 acres. You'll send him a soil sample and he'll tell you exactly the kind of biodiversity that you should plant in the ground.
That's a fantastic idea.
Maximize a fast forest. You know, you can grow forest really quickly. And so it'd be interesting to sort of talk about that knowledge where you're talking about adjusting the microorganisms in the soil so that we wouldn't need insecticides or pesticides.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same thought. Remember that what is it that we do? I mean, if you think about the underlying science behind Viome is we look at every single organism, every single genes that are expressed in the human body. So we started with the gut to look at every single microorganism. What are they producing? And once we know what they're producing, we know what bad things they're producing that we need to reduce, what good things they're not producing that we need to increase. And by the way, so I'm going to announce it here. So within the next 3 weeks, we're going to be launching a blood transcriptomics where we are going to be able to actually do the same thing with the human gene expression and the mitochondria. So for the first time, we'll be looking at all your mitochondrial gene expression, your energy production, your mitochondrial biogenesis. We're going to be looking at all your inflammation marker in your body. So remember all the cytokines, which are interleukins, they cause the inflammation, and the chronic diseases are caused by the chronic inflammation. So we're going to look at all the inflammation in your body, all the cellular stress in your body, all the immune response, immune activation, so we can build the immunity for you so you're protected from things like SARS-CoV-2, right?
Wow.
The idea really is to look at, then we are also doing the same thing with the saliva. So looking at your saliva, we can now look at all the microorganisms and the human gene expression and the microbial gene expression in your saliva.
Do we not? Is it true that we have our own microbiome in our mouths as well? It's a separate one.
Absolutely. And in fact, here's very interesting. We were just looking at that. In fact, we filed with FDA last week for the breakthrough device, where just by looking at the microbial activity in our saliva, we can predict you have oral cancer with 91% accuracy, stage 1, stage 2 oral cancer with 91% accuracy, right?
That's a game changer, man. That's huge. That's huge.
And by the way, we're doing the same thing with GI cancers now, esophagus cancer, pancreatic cancer. You know, Tom, I don't know if you know or not, I lost my dad last year to pancreatic cancer. And I told him that, Dad, we know it's caused by the gut microbiome. I can't save you, but I'm going to do everything I can to save every human I can. And, I told him that I'm going to work harder than ever to solve this problem.
Yeah. Amazing,
and he goes, whatever. Get us a cup of tea there. Relax, will you? No, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful, Naveen. That's a really beautiful thing.
And this is going to be coming through Viome as well.
So it's going to be basically called Health Intelligence Service. We're going to look at all of that. And by the way, not only we can now, just by looking at your microbial activity in your gut, we can predict that before you have depression, that you're going to be getting a depression, diabetes, obesity, or IBS. Wow. In fact, now we're doing about 15 clinical trials to show that you were telling me, Tom, that's how you crack the mainstream. We are going out to the Mayo Clinic and we are showing them that by simply changing your diet, and we are, by the way, launching something called precision supplements. And this is the first time we are talking about that, because we realize that once we know what nutrients your body needs, sometimes the nutrients are so lacking, you can't eat 10,000 pounds of broccoli. So we're thinking now we're going to put all the concentrated food into the pill that is designed for you. And only when you order the kit, that means there's no single person who's going to ever get that pill again.
Wow. So it's literally a fully customized pill for your body.
Wow.
Just for your body.
That's incredible.
Everything that you need and nothing that you don't need. That means everything that you need, every nutrition, all the prebiotic, all the probiotics, all the oils, every single ingredients, and we're going to put like 50 or so ingredient that your body needs. That's only for you, and we make one at a time. There's going to be no single person who's going to get that pill.
Do me a favor, Naveen. Send one of those kits my way.
Yeah, that's like Willy Wonka.
I'll be the first in line.
It's like you're like a modern day Willy Wonka. Instead of modern chocolate, you're doing modern health, just in the most delightful way.
And the idea is that, the whole thing is health delivered precisely. That means we're going to look at what's happening in your body, and the more information we know, not just from your gut, but from your blood, from your saliva, make it more and more precise. And then we deliver everything that you need. And then we show you that how your biomarkers for your health are improving, right? So we're going to give you your biological age, your health score, your gut score. We're going to show you everything that's happening inside your body, your cellular stress, your inflammation. And then we're going to show that when you take these precision supplement, how all these biomarkers are actually changing and improving. So you don't have to take it on a faith. It is actually something we can prove that it works. And that has never been done. Complete precision personalization at a mass scale.
Hey,
yeah, see, that's huge, man. That is exactly what you're talking about. That is this kind of thing, because you need that huge change to create the change on mass scale. You need to be able to prove a concept.
And that's the good thing about Naveen. Have you heard of Wim Hof?
Yes, of course. I met him. Yes,
he's
very wonderful. I mean, look what he's done, training his brain to train actually live underwater for minutes. I don't know how he does it.
And to have some dominion consciously over the immune system. Yeah. That's what's so quite fascinating. And I think the between you and him, it's like, I think it's an amazing sort of era of health where people can take control over their own health by having a precise pill and essentially doing breathing techniques that connect all of the primitive parts of your brain.
I mean, I think that's one of the big problems in society as we live in, like you said, Tom, about convenience. Everybody is giving the steering wheel away to a professional, a doctor, an authority.
Yeah.
We all need to get the steering wheel back in our hands with knowledge like you get from Viome, and this new blood test sounds amazing. That gives us a steering wheel. And like you said, then it's up to us. We want to be sick. That's our choice. We can drive.
What's interesting about that is, like, Naveen, you talk about this in your book, in that people all want growth, right? Everyone wants to grow in some way. And they want to be better. They want to have a better life. But people, as human beings, fundamentally don't like change. So until you've proven that change works, people don't want to do it. And that's the thing. I talk about this all the time. I can talk all day long about how food is medicine. And I believe that it's one of the main reasons why it's made my life better. But people don't want to change their own lives because they haven't seen that proof themselves.
It's a similar thing with meditation. It's a similar thing because it's
exactly the same as meditation.
You can't really explain it academically.
But Absolutely. Tom, that's the reason. So that is the reason we thought about doing this precision pill, because idea was people want convenience. They're not going to eat all the good foods because we want them to eat. So why not take all your superfoods and put them in a pill for you so you can take that pill, right? So my idea was that what if we can make it so easy and convenient that at least we can help you with what we can, giving you all the nutrients that your body needs and nothing that you don't need. So it's literally everything you need, and there's not a single thing in there that you don't need.
So have you been researching? Amazing. Have you been researching other ways to give human beings energy, Naveen? I know you mentioned a while back. You said radiation. You mentioned a few alternative ways of giving us fuel.
Yeah. So remember, the energy. There are two types of energy. One is the energy that obviously that our cells create. That is through mitochondria, right? So mitochondria, just in case most people forget the high school biology, is an ancient bacteria that is inside our cell. So think about that for a second. There is an organism inside our cell that has its own DNA that actually provides all the energy to our cell. If you think about from their perspective,
he's a warlock. Sorry, go on. I'm a joke. Go on.
So what I was thinking was that all microorganisms started on the planet about 3.5 billion years ago. Wow. The humans only came about in the last couple of 100,000 years, right? So we live in this microbial world And the story that sometimes I talk about is that how they may have actually created us so that we can actually spread them around, right? So they created humans to carry them around. Right?
Do you think they're that clever, Naveen? Do you think that they have, let's say, a sort of a web, a consciousness like that? Microbial?
Of course. I mean, look, every single thing has a consciousness. And I think, if you look at we as humans, I'm not trying to get to that, the voodoo stuff, but the fact is, you and I actually may not, we see this solid person like Tom or, Rob, all of you. There is no person in the body that exists, because if you think about it, what is me? I am consist of molecules, which are consist of atoms, as atoms are consist of electrons and protons and the quarks. At the end of the day, it's just some energy that's going around, but our human brain think of us as one solid thing. We look at the table or iPhone, it is literally a bunch of waves. So if you think about that, if we are energy and the waves, that means every one of us are connected in the same ecosystem. We are not two separate people. We are not. So when you look at the microorganism in us, we are literally connected to the same energetic wave that's coming together. There is only one global consciousness that we live in. There is no my consciousness or your consciousness. There is one consciousness, and we are simply a manifestation of that consciousness.
It's lovely, Naveen, to hear a man of science, a very, very clever clogs like you, coming to that conclusion. It's beautiful, because I think science has been incredibly helpful in the advancement of man, but it is also, with its sort of extra materialism sort of pursuits, has negated, I think, what you have just described, what the world really is. There's a great,
we all one.
We're all one. There's a great speaker on that called Dr. Eben Alexander, who was an American neuroscientist who essentially was brain dead for like 7 days and came back after that, after bacterial meningitis, with profound memories from something that didn't have the identity Dr. Eben Alexander. He essentially rejoined the oneness of love and consciousness, and then came back and wrote books about it and speaks about it and stuff. He's very fascinating too.
Naveen, that is such an enlightened and an integrated viewpoint of how the world works. Tell me, how do you feel like you got there? I mean, coming from India, the way you were raised, however you were, and then being an engineer, I would assume was your education originally.
Yes, so it's very interesting is that, even though everything I have done now 7 companies, no 2 companies have ever been in the same industry, because as Tom was pointing out, to me, the fundamental thing is once you become an expert at anything, you become useless in that. And what I mean by that is you become incrementalist. You can only make it incrementally better. So if you want to make something 10% better, you go to an expert. But when you want to make something 10 times better, then you go to a non-expert, because they fundamentally challenge the foundation of everything you have taken it for granted. So I have no background. If you look at my educational background, is industrial engineering and the union management. Think about that for a second. And my first company was dealing with cell phones, right? So my point is, I have never seen a computer in my life, but that didn't deter me to say what can be solved. Because to me, it is not my job to have all the right answers. My job is to constantly and say, why can't it be done? And why can't we do it this way? And then every expert said, because that won't work. And until you start asking them, tell me why that won't work. And then suddenly the first thing they say, oh, it might work. And then it's a brilliant idea, right? But what is day before any breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And until the breakthrough happens, then it becomes an obvious idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's exactly it.
So on that note, we should hire a whole load of hoodlums and children as police. Go. They're not experts, but they'll do it 10
make it
times
more
better.
efficiently. Yes.
But I think that's true. That rings very true. No.
You'll be surprised at how well the hoodlums actually would manage the community, because they know every single thing people do, they shouldn't be doing, where they're hiding, and how to talk to them, because they talk the same language. Right? So in a sense, I think having the people from the community to really be the police really is, there's a merit to it. So it's not a joke.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
My father was a policeman for 30 years, but he kind of bemoans the fact that there is a bit more of a dividing line between police and communities in Ireland. I can't speak for anywhere but Ireland because you're talking about. But recently I then met some police from Dublin whose job it is specifically to be community outreach, to essentially be the bridge between, to keep up that connectivity, essentially, because they need to do their job.
Dublin has a police. I didn't even know that.
You wouldn't even know, Naveen. They're all dressed in civvies.
Yeah.
So Naveen, do you think everyone, to be optimal, a better Earthling, should they just dive headfirst into many different pools of expertise, whatever?
More than anything else, to be optimal simply requires you to have a mindset of everything is possible, because the only thing that's not possible is the one that you believe is not possible. It becomes impossible for you and no one else, right? Even my mom, who loved me, she would always tell me when I was young, "Oh, son, you're very bright. You can do anything. Sky is the limit." She put the limit on that. The sky is the limit. Until I grew up, then I realized
that everyone else would go, "Oh, wow, that's amazing."
Wow.
She goes,
what's all this sky nonsense?
I'm going to the moon.
Screw that.
Good on you, Naveen. That's
but my
amazing.
point is, the sky doesn't exist. Sky is nothing but a figment of our imagination. When you go from here to the moon, you don't say, "Mom, I just passed the sky." Right? There is no sky. My point is, sky, these are the limitations we create on ourselves in our lives. So now imagine how many skies do we create every single day. That can't be done. That's your limit, right? So my point is, every time we set a limit, it is simply a figment of our imagination. Anything that we can imagine, we can achieve. And that's the reason why science fiction is so amazing, because science fiction gives us the imagination, and next thing you know, it is possible.
Foundation trilogy, Naveen. Probably my favorite trilogy of sci-fi novels of all time. I read them in about a week and a half in Italy when I was 24. I just hoovered them up because they are a vision of a galaxy, a galactic civilization that perhaps you're taking the first steps of now, because in Foundation, human beings have colonized almost an entire galaxy. And at the very center of the civilization, it's starting to corrode. It's starting to kind of fall down.
I want, Naveen, can you remember, perhaps maybe it's so many different points. Do you think there was one point when you had your first epiphany about the connectedness of everything? Was there an event, or just slowly evolve in your head and your mindset?
The truth be told, that is not a new concept. If you go back and look at the Eastern culture, and look at Ayurveda, and you look at all the things we have known for generations, that the universe is one. We all talk about this. We are part of this one universe, right? And obviously that theory itself, one could argue that there is not a one universe, there is a multiverse, right? In this multiverse, there are multiple universes. And if you think about the quantum entangling, there is quite a reason to believe that there is a multiple versions of each one of us in some universe that is doing something different, and they will be living in the past and the future. That means our future is out there, our past is out there, and everything is happening all simultaneously because they feel quantumly entangled. But anyway, setting that aside, it is, to me, we know empirically that when we change the planet, and when the planet gets screwed, our health gets screwed. And when our health gets screwed, we end up screwing the planet, right? So my point is, everything is so connected. And anytime it's like a ripple effect. Every time you throw the stone in that water, that ripple effect constantly goes on. So every action we take individually not only just impacts us, but it impacts every one of us. And I think that's the reason taking the first step and saying, not about why can't someone do something about it, taking the first step and saying, why can't I do something about it? And really moving away from this mindset of scarcity to this mindset of abundance. Because once you get there, you can never come back, because then the scarcity mindset tells you use less of what you have, and mindset of abundance says create more of what you need. And once you do that, then you suddenly can create a very, I would say, abundant society.
On these lovely sunny days, Naveen, with the corona lockdown, me and a friend have been wandering around London looking for little green patches, bits of lawn, essentially bits of earth that aren't really being used. and going around and guerrilla planting.
At least by 2 meters, at least, anyway.
I'm going around guerrilla planting as much wildflower as we can, which I tell you, for anybody listening or watching, it gives you a disproportionate level of smugness that you can take back to other humans and go, well, what did you do today? But no, it does. It gives you a lovely, warm, profound, fundamental human glow of satisfaction to be able to use your energy to solve a little bit of a global problem that, I think that in the modern age, it's hard for people because they wake up lumbered with an existential climate anxiety, and it's so overwhelming that it almost overrides that proactive positive mind thinking that you're talking about in a lot of people, where they go, but it's just so overwhelming, I can't do anything about it. But I think ultimately the message that Naveen and we're sort of going along in your coattails is just do what you can, just use your arms and legs and do.
So actually, I'm going to tell you something. It's very easy. When you have a complex problem, the best way to do that is once you start to break them down into what are the things that need to be done to achieve that, what are the things that need to be done. And once you break them down, every small thing doesn't look complex anymore. And that's the trick, is to take a complex problem, break it down into smaller problems. And each problem you say, I can do that. Right? And that's literally how you solve a complex problem.
And that's why we are talking to Leicestershire. We're talking to the British Virgin Islands. We're in London. My apartment's turned into a haphazard podcast studio. What's going on? But it's true. We wouldn't be talking otherwise. I mean, this is... I
mean, there's ways of... I mean, I think about that in terms of... if you think about cooking a meal, right, and putting a load of ingredients together. Like my brother asked me the recipe for one of the dishes I put out on Instagram recently, and he was like, it seems like a lot of work though. And in my head, it wasn't, because literally what I'd done, I'd literally just gone, I'm going to do this part of the dish. I'm going to do this, this, and this with it. Then I'm going to do this part of the dish. I'm going to do this, this, and this. So because I focused on each little bit of the dish at a time, it didn't feel like a big problem to try and achieve the overall dish that I had in my head.
What was the dish, Tom?
So there's a restaurant I go to in Los Angeles called Takaya, which I've taken you to, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
And since being in lockdown, I've obviously
not been able to...
Malone
there. Malone there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was there. Yeah. Since the lockdown, I've not been to that restaurant in LA, and I'd really been craving one of their burrito bowls. So I had to compartmentalize each part of the bowl and try and figure out what the ingredients were for each part of the bowl. So I had to make the cauliflower rice a specific way. I had to make the salsa a specific way, because also I had to make it without tomatoes, because tomatoes are on my avoid list.
Yeah, me too. Because of the little viruses, Naveen, that sort of stow away on certain vegetables that come in and live in your gut. That was one of the big... for everyone, basically, when you get your results from Viome, some vegetables for some people say you shouldn't have this or should have a very minimal amount because it's infected with a certain virus, and that virus then lives in your microbiome and it eats the vegetable that it came in on, and it causes all sorts of bother.
Yeah, it lives off it.
And I think ultimately when you do a retest, and quite likely the virus will die away if you stop feeding it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Just stop feeding it. Hey, Naveen, what about me? I really, really like dark chocolate. Well, I'm up to 85%. That's the best.
Oh, mate, you got to get on the 100. I'll send you this 100. It is unreal.
Rand, no, it's like eating coal.
No, it's not. I promise you. It's so good.
All right, I'll push it. But I mean, in that thing about when the craving hits you, isn't it? It's like a certain time of the day or whatever, and you feel,
But think about addiction. That's an addiction. You just have to say, I'm not going to feed that bad boy in my gut. And once I stop feeding that bad boy who's creating this addiction for me, is going to go away, and then I'm not going to have that addiction. It's really amazing. Sometimes I just have such a strong craving for having dessert after meal. And I just went through the stuff. I'm just not going to do it. And after 7 days, you don't even like eating it anymore.
Yes, that's so true. Because sugar is exactly that. I mean, sugar is such an addictive substance that you realize, like I've not eaten sugar now for probably 6 years, I think. And you realize that it is like a drug when you've come off it because you do not crave it anymore. It's very hard to see that change when you're in it and think, oh no, because surely you want it, surely you still want that craving. And it's kind of like an ex-drug addict, I think, in that you know what that feeling is, you know what it tastes like, you know it's great, but you don't desire it. You can go without it and you feel good for it.
So just don't stop feeding the bad boy. Just stop.
Stop feeding the bad boy.
Stop.
I love that
bad boy.
Yeah.
I'd have nothing left, Naveen, if I stopped feeding the bad boy.
You need nothing at all.
He's got so many bad boys to feed.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the best part. Once you make a room for, once you get out of bad boys, I can tell you make a room for really the good soul to come in.
Absolutely.
A lot of good souls out there.
Yeah.
Stop dating all those bad girls. You'll have a room for good girls.
Oh, yeah.
That is something every young person needs to realize.
Yeah. That's the thing. You realize as well that like your taste buds change massively when you get rid of those certain things like sugars and additives in processed foods. Your taste buds start to appreciate real food on a crazy level. Like broccoli tastes insane. It's so good.
It looks insane too.
It does, yeah. It's gnarly. It looks like a brain or something.
There's some mushrooms growing in my compost bin that are they're like little. Thanks, Uncle Byron.
Oh,
first thing he says is, eat them,
eat them.
But they're like little slender red roses. They're absolutely beautiful. They look like red broccolis. Well, a little bit, not really. Just the broccoli thing reminded me.
You guys are going tangents on me now.
Guys, we are getting close to the end of this time with Naveen. Is there anything else that we absolutely need to know?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think we've taken a fair bite out of you, Naveen, today.
I mean, I'm super excited. Naveen, you got some very exciting things coming up with. I assume you said it's part of Viome, this new testing with the supplementation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge part of the future for me. I mean, I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing. We're massive advocates of what you're doing. We're trying to join you on that journey.
Also, with the food chain, Naveen, we're very interested in the food chain, how people eat, and fixing themselves from inside. That thing about adjusting the microorganisms in soil, that's really, really fascinating to me. And if we could get you in front of policymakers and people, or at least people who recommend to policymakers, and be like, this is what we have to get away from poisonous fertilizers and things and insecticides.
And I think the way we do that is you start doing it yourself. Remember, if you go to policy, there's nothing is going to change because there's too much vested interest. So the best way to do that is to create our own farming and start to deliver the people that when they eat that fruit or vegetable, they say, oh my God, amazing taste, look at the juicy tomatoes. I mean, sometimes you look at these organic tomatoes and you eat them, it's like they're almost like sweet.
Yeah. My dad, bless him, he's just started a vegetable patch in the back garden, and he has a neighbor who grows amazing carrots, which has motivated him now massively to get his carrots as good as the neighbor.
Good on him. That's brilliant.
Yeah, he's dying to. So, thank you very much, Naveen, for speaking to us on the Earth Locker. Whoop, whoop.
It's been such a pleasure to have you on, Naveen, really.
Thank you.
Namaste.
We have been really, honestly, you guys are amazing, and thank you for doing what you do. And there are more. We need more people like you, the good souls like that can spread this message. And all we can say is we are on that mission, and we need every one of us to come together. So someday we can create a world where being sick is truly a matter of choice, not a matter of bad luck.
Amazing.
Absolutely, man. Amen to that.
Amen. Give Richard Branson a pat on the bum from me. Just a little pat, just a little gentle brotherly pat on the bum.
All right, brother. Absolutely. All right, you take care of yourself.
Take care, Naveen.
Thank you,
Take care.
Naveen. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice one, boyos. That was great.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a guy, man. What a guy.
Amazing dude. Amazing dude.
He's doing. I mean, that really is a game changer. What he's talking about there. I mean, the fact of what he's solving, the problem that he solved, is that people don't want to have to go and cook all their food. They don't want to be like, oh yeah, but I've got to go eat this and I've got to get this random Jerusalem artichoke. Where am I going to get that from? He's going, Jerusalem. Let's put it all in a pill, because apparently the human race like to take pills. Yeah. So here you go, have a pill.
You know, if everybody had like a fraction of the slice of Naveen's determination, do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's what I'm talking about right there. You think bigger. You know, you just think crazy big.
Yeah, he's kind of in that sort of Elon Musk way of, you know, does not see the sky as a limit. Like Elon Musk, who literally looked at space exploration and broke it down stage by stage by stage. I was listening to Elon talking about the buy to fly cost ratio that NASA have between the materials that end up in space versus the stuff that they actually have on the ground, raw material, everything, you know. And saying the buy to fly ratio was way off. It was mad expensive on the ground to get something, you know, whatever in the air. And so he's basically just built a company
I think that
brings those two numbers closer
what
together.
What Naveen said there about the fourth international power is entrepreneurship. You know, nations have been up there. China, America, Russia.
Because Byron never the entrepreneur. He's like, oh yeah. He's slapping his hands.
Where can I make some money in space? I don't actually think about space. I think about inner space. That's what it's actually really focused on. Where do I make money on inner space? Which is why I'm interested in what we eat. Yeah. You know, there's so much going on there. The better we feel. Why don't we? I got a major sugar addiction. Still battling with it. Conquered my thing with smoking. You know. Off and on for decades, you know, to finally with my kid being born, my little baby, I said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. You know, and I've just gotten rid of it for the past year and a half. I haven't smoked a single cigarette or cigar.
Well done, man.
But sugar, man, it bites its ass.
I like dark chocolate.
But you know, dark chocolate, man. I mean, if you're gonna have like a vice, I mean, geez, I eat a ton of dark chocolate. Yeah. It's it's one of those things that actually has some health benefits as well. So in terms of
exactly,
I try and it's not a bad one.
And the other one, Tom, I've been, because I'm a late night eater. I mean, I think I've told you this before. Like I get very hungry.
You're getting the munchies, mate.
Yeah, the munchies, exactly.
I don't know why.
And I don't know, man. So the old stomach starts doing backflips.
Are you still doing the
I eat apples
intermittent fasting, Rob?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, I did it the other day. Actually, I didn't eat for 18 hours. That's a good fast. Yeah, because I had a big long sleep and I'd eaten quite late. Surprise, surprise. And so I didn't eat then for about 16, 18 hours and had like a couple of blasts of just a little apple cider vinegars. But that is my thing this is, you know, it's so inspiring talking to the likes of Naveen, you know, and you know, I'm just used to you two twits because, you know, you're very inspiring in your own ways, but he's like a full like espresso shot of inspiration. How easy it is just to stop eating chocolate.
He's been a huge influence in my life for a while. Like I've followed him on social media and a lot of the talks that he's done and keynote speaking things he's done. And he's so inspiring, man. Like it makes you think about the planet in a different way. And it makes me believe that what we're trying to do on the Earth Locker is actually achievable. It makes me think we can actually change the way people think to make it a better planet.
Yeah. It's interesting because like, I think what has sort of made the Corona lockdown an interesting thing is that for the most part, certainly in my world, I can only speak subjectively, I've noticed that people have really applied themselves to self-improvement, be it through training. You know, training's a big one. Yeah. People going to the park and like stretching for hours and doing at-home yoga and doing all these things that are about improving the body, you know, and keeping the fitness up. But I genuinely think that in the modern world, that's the kind of threshold step to improving inner space and going back to things like meditation and essentially the functions and be essentially the function of awareness and being and growing consciousness and awareness. In my experience, in my journey of meditation over the last 3 years, I'm so much more inwardly decisive. Do you know what I mean? Like if I have if I have an impulse, be it for chocolate or, or if you're on the fence a bit, you're like, do I want to do that thing? Do I not want to do that thing? Do I want to? Now I never have that because I'm absolutely clear and sure about what I want or what I don't want. You know what I mean? Because I'm not operating from a passive place. I'm operating from an aware place. And the longer you spend in
living in the moment kind of concept.
Yeah, exactly. I think the longer that you practice being in the moment, essentially, without any other noise, without any other distraction.
Now, that's interesting, Rob. Do you have is there an active decision there of whether you decide to do something or not? Because I have a similar sort of thing, is whether if I want to do something, do I actively think, will that be a negative thing on my body, or will it be something that's actually going to better me? Do you ever have that negotiation in your head of like, no, I'm going to do it, even though I know it might not be?
Yeah. But it happens in I suppose, like all minds, it happens in more of a conceptual way. I suppose with meditation, it's hard to kind of put words on the experience of it, but it where that negotiation happens that you're talking about. It happens in a deeper place. It happens in a bodily place. Do you know what I mean? It's like you take the mind out of the brain to some degree or another. Because, like Krishnamurti talks about the human psychological structure being the gut, the heart, and the brain. And that all three together make the human psychological structure. And I think that's very, very true, because you start to make decisions from your belly more noticeably. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That your awareness is not just up and around here all the time. You're constantly fully aware, and that changes. I think it makes you feel more relaxed. It makes you feel more optimistic. It just makes you feel nicer and smoother.
That's interesting, because fundamentally, as people, there's a system, a personality system called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram talks about whether fundamentally as people, everyone's different, number one, but there'll be people that have something that comes from their gut, like a thought of whether to do something, making a decision, or whether they're the brain or the heart. So they're all linked, but so when I did the Enneagram, everything is my head. Everything is like, I go inside my head and I think, oh, should I do this? Should I not do that? And I have this negotiation from here. And I do think, Rob, from knowing you as long as I have, you do seem to be more from the gut, because you just do it. You're someone, like if you look at a conversation between you and me of whether we're going to do something, I'll go, and think about it. And then you're like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Boom. It's straight out. And you see that with different people. When you hang around with different people, you can see that, and like someone might be more emotional about a situation, which means they're more from the heart. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at the way people are.
And the Aboriginals, I think Ed Stafford spoke about this. I think it was him. The Aboriginals look at the Western way, and they say that we use that brain too much, that it's essentially, we're using it for all of the decisions, that should be metered out through our entire psychology, and it's putting way too much strain on the thinking mind. And it's not, the thinking mind it's one arm of our awareness, and I think the longer you sit in meditation, the longer you go, that's just a sort of a tool. It's almost like an inward sense, you
need to be able to tap into it, but
and use it to solve problems. And like Naveen was saying, go, okay, how can we do this? Break this down, and actually, think about things in a very tangible way. But I think, we are, as Naveen said, we are so much deeper as beings than that, as problem solvers. We are everything, and everything is us. And you just sit with the universe in your belly when you meditate. Like, I just can't recommend it enough, lads and ladies. It's just a really nice thing to do, to remind you how human you actually are and how in control you are. Saying, coming from a man who's deeply addicted to lint, 85%. It's not like Lint are going to send us a big box of delicious chocolate. I mean, we don't want that.
Wink. This episode of the Philosopher was sponsored by Lint. 85%.
Not sponsored by Lint. Yeah.
Oh man, guys. this is amazing. This has been really good.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be a nice world if instead of people sniffling and wiping their arses more, we all got into tantra or something? Just have a great big orgy in Trafalgar Square. That's all I'm after. Anyone? No?
Nope.
It may be around the corner. It's your moonshot. That's your moonshot.
Your moonshot. And only parliamentary leaders. That's it. Will loosen everybody up.
Show up to the pitch meeting to Naveen dressed in a little two-piece. Oh.
Wow. What a great talk with Naveen Jain. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast. Since Rob and Tom came up with the title of this as the Earth Locker, we like to refer to our listeners and supporters as Earthlings, but that in no way is meant to discriminate against our extraterrestrial listeners. We definitely admire what Naveen is doing in the world and encourage you to check out Viome at viome.com/Earthlings. The link will be in the show notes. And as a thank you from Naveen, put in promo code Earthlings at checkout and get a $10 off each item you get at Viome. Hey, please also be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review. When you leave a review, it helps people to find us so we can keep sharing. Be sure to comment and tell us what your moonshot in life is as well. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Earth Locker. The Earth Locker is produced by Byron Knight, edited by Luna Wolf of DisturbiaFilms.com and the multi-talented Storm Stewart. Director of photography is Christoph Assock. Assistant producer is Amanda Taylor. Design and marketing by Alice Vandy, with a big thanks for technical support from the Flow State Production.
This podcast represents the opinions of the hosts and guests of the show, not the parent or affiliate companies of the Earth Locker. All content on this podcast is solely owned and copyrights reserved by the Earth Locker. The content here should not be taken as medical, financial, psychological, spiritual, or even public transport advice. The show is for informational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Talk to your financial advisor and take anything we say with a pinch of Himalayan pink salt. Speak with your elders about personal and spiritual matters because, let's face it, they know the shit because they've lived through it. The contents of this podcast might have settled during transport and batteries are not included.